All right, first up is approval of the June 5th minutes. Are there any changes and are you both okay with approving those?
I am good with them.
I will abstain since I missed.
Okay. All right, those are approved. Next up, Bill Levine, May 2025 sales tax chart.
Good afternoon, Council. So to talk about sales tax collections for the month of May, we collected $24.4 million. That amount was 1.4 million or 6% more than what we collected May 2024. So that's really good. Story that I'm going to tell you today is very similar to what I told you a month ago. Two big factors drove that 6% growth. The first being really strong variable sales tax collections. And the second story being that we're still seeing some panic buying. And so just to be clear, I'm kind of making my own term, although that's not literally my own term, but I'm defining that specifically as people panicking related to the implementation of federal tariffs and wanting to rush in and get things at current prices before prices potentially increase with tariffs. So demonstrating that point about the panic buying, I track 15 sectors, as you know, and I often talk about that. I want to talk about three that really drove almost the entirety of the increase we saw. So what we saw for the month in industrial sales, we saw those were up 330%. So we had a couple of companies really going out there and buying some things. And Candace, I don't have a chart for this one, so you can probably leave it on the growth chart. Honestly, it's just a good backdrop, but I don't have anything specific to this in the charts. So 330% for industrial sales. Auto dealers were up. Actually, I should say the auto sector was up 9%. And when I track the auto sector, to be clear, there are really several subsectors in there. So my auto sector includes auto dealers, new and used. It includes auto maintenance, auto parts. If you just look at the new and used auto sector, it's not the 9%. The relevant number would be 18.7%. So again, within even the sector, you really saw strong growth from auto dealers. Final sector I wanted to talk about is electronics, which were up 77%. So three sectors, really strong growth, all three sectors. If I take all 12 other sectors, they were up 0.8%. So very different results by sector. So with those returns, we finished for just the month of May, $174,000 above the budget plan for the month. So with that good month of revenue, we are still a little over $300,000 behind the budget plan. If you remember, we started the year really poorly in January. We've been playing catch up ever since. We continue to catch up, but we're a little bit under plan. Final thing I wanted to add, so sales tax has been on this trend. We've had 4 good months in a row. We've also had another consistency in our monthly results, and that's that auto use tax continues to miss. Just for the month of May, we were over $500,000 below plan. And capital related use tax has also consistently been under. Just for the month of May, we missed by over 600,000. So a lot of these trends that we're seeing this month are just continuation, unfortunately, of trends that we have been seeing over recent months. So with that, I will open it up if there are any questions about revenue.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, so I'm going to ask the same kind of question I've asked the last several months in the context of projected budget shortfall for 2026. Are we still tracking towards the same expected shortfall, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, I would say the answer is yes, we're tracking towards the same projected shortfall. I think we're potentially becoming a little bit more optimistic on sales tax, but that's being offset by the fact that we are, continuing to see negative trends and getting less or getting more pessimistic, unfortunately, and related to both forms of use tax, so both auto use tax and capital related use tax, and it leaves us roughly in the same place. So I think we are.
Yep.
I think I might have heard a Greg give a yup in there, backing that, but I think we really are in the same spot.
Great. Councilmember Coombs.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner. So I have one question, which is if we are seeing an increase in auto sales, what is causing us to be under projection on auto use tax? And then I'll have an additional question after that.
Excellent question. Greg Hayes asked me this same question about a half hour ago. So we aren't seeing the same trend, just to be clear. So it is a good question. Auto use tax flows through the counties. So typically between the sale of a car and when we receive the money, several months, 2 to 4 months typically transpire before we see the revenue. So I think it would be reasonable to think that by July we will see that we will see a spike. It will probably be short-lived. But we should see that. We haven't yet, but I think it relates to that delay. Sales tax is a 1-month delay between an actual sale and us receiving the revenue. So it's really that difference of how those two things work.
Great, thank you. And then my second question is related to the capital use tax. So I know capital use taxes are one of, like, capital use tax exemptions are one of the tools we use to incentivize certain types of development and growth. I'm sure maybe you have this number off the top of your head, but I guess I'd be surprised. Could we get some numbers about how much capital use tax for each of these months that we're seeing a shortfall has been exempted for particular projects?
Surprisingly, I can actually give that to you. So we give them on the building materials use tax specifically. So we have those incentives. Looking at this year, through May, we gave out $200,000 in incentives. Compared to a year ago, we were at 20,000. So it certainly is a larger number, but I would also say, so that's $180,000 more. That's not, in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't say that's a major reason that it's down. It's a minor reason that it's down.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Bergan.
Yes, thank you. Just back on the question that Councilmember Coombs asked on so you said the auto use tax is down because of the delay from the county in how the money gets to us. So the growth of the 9%, then is that was more the parts?
And sorry to be confusing on that. So we saw for the month of May, the auto sector was up 9%. Auto
Right.
dealers were up about double that. And so that's sales tax collections. Auto use tax has been, generally speaking, actually in the negative. And so what I was speaking to is sort of, okay, so if we're getting more sales tax from auto dealers, how come we aren't seeing more auto use tax collections?
Right.
And the reason there is really the delay. There's a delay between the sale of a car and us actually receiving auto use tax. That takes about 2 to 4 months between sale and us receiving the money. And that has to do with the fact that auto use tax doesn't come directly to us. It flows to the counties. The counties then disperse it back to us.
Okay. So if I buy a car in Aurora, it doesn't matter. If I buy it outside of Aurora, but you count it both as use tax
If you
versus
buy
sales tax?
If you as an Aurora citizen buy a car in Aurora, you will pay sales tax.
Right.
If you as an Aurora resident go to Denver or somewhere else, outside of Aurora and buy it, you will pay a use tax and not a sales tax.
Okay, so is that the difference?
That's the difference. So that's where the people buying outside of Aurora residents buying outside of Aurora, we have not seen that spike yet.
Okay.
And that would show up in auto use tax.
Yeah, you didn't differentiate that. That's why I was like confused. So I wanted to just clarify that. Okay, thank you. Then on the tariffs. So I know you're saying panic buying, but the tariffs are in place. So is this because there's a lag between when the tariffs are placed versus the effect on the tariffs? Is that what you're implying?
I think I'm more saying not even getting into tariffs. People are worried about tariffs. They're not sure what's going to happen, and so they want to lock in prices. I know my mom did this, not even in the state of Colorado, but she got worried and said, you know, I'm going to rush out. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know
Yeah.
what the result is going to be. And we hear 10%, we hear some other percent. She just wanted to get in and get a car and not have to worry about it might be more expensive later. So she just went
Okay.
out and knew now, like, hey, if I go now, I know what the price is. I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. So it's sort
Okay.
of getting in and trying to just capture the certainty of what you know, as opposed to the uncertainty of the future.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
And can I
Councilmember
just
Coombs?
add on that? Yeah, so a lot of the auto dealers are putting on their websites for stock they already had on the lot, like no tariffs on this car, kind of advertising that like basically this car was manufactured pre-tariffs, so you're getting a cheaper deal than you will when we have to raise the price due to tariffs. So there is a lag, I think, but it's also a marketing strategy that auto dealers are using at this time as well.
All right. Any other questions on this one? All right. Thanks for the presentation, Bill.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up, CABC update. Greg, are you doing that, or Janet, are you doing that?
We've got Janet here to do it for us.
I'm going to do it.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Janet Marlowe. I am the current chair of CABC. Just going to give you a really quick update. Our annual workshop and budget meeting this month is July 22nd and 23rd, where we will be working on getting our report and presentation ready for the council meeting in September. We're kind of continuing along the same course as we did last year with a slight twist this year, with the consideration that we are looking at a potential budget shortfall this year and future years. So our three subcommittees are role of government, which is a review of the city charter and ordinances to see how they work together to govern the city functions and what are the opportunities available to potentially better coordinate or transfer these functions to the county or a third party. Efficiencies. They are looking at long-term and short-term services that might be better accomplished by a third-party entity, or how technology, AI, that kind of stuff might better serve the staff to decrease their workload. And then the last one is revenue generation. Again, looking at short-term and long-term solutions to help offset the potential budget and capital fund shortfalls, and what are some areas that the city might be able to look at to generate additional income, i.e. TABOR, consumption-based fees, things like that. The committee does continue to have a quorum, which we are super happy about. We are allowing members to attend virtually if they are sick or if they have a extenuating circumstance. However, we continue to strongly encourage people, and we appreciate the council encouraging their employees to attend in person. It just makes for a better meeting, and we have really, really good conversations. So, and that concludes my really quick update.
Great, thanks. Are there any questions from the committee?
I just want to say thank you.
Love my page. Absolutely. So, and thank you, and obviously to Councilmember Gardner for coming in and presenting to the budget committee. We really enjoy having you guys come in and talk to us. So,
Yep. No, thank you for your work, and I know I speak for Councilmember Bergan because we're both alumni of CABC. You guys do really good work, and so appreciate you taking the time to volunteer. And thanks for coming in today.
great. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Janet.
Next up, Michelle Crawford, Q2 internal audit update.
Good
I can
afternoon.
interject. I'm sorry. I was going to ask if you wanted me to show this, or are you going to show it?
If you can do it, Candace, just the
Okay.
PowerPoint slides.
Sure.
I can go ahead and get started. So Michelle Crawford, City Auditor. So this is our quarterly update for the second quarter. We'll go through overall updates and then engagement updates. You can go to the next slide, please. So overall updates, we did implement the new citywide business policy memorandum, which is the internal audit policy. Really just restructured this based off the audit ordinance and the audit charter updates, took out a lot of our internal processes and just focused on what's applicable to citywide staff. We have our annual risk assessment planning underway. This is what we use to develop our annual audit plans. And then I did present at the Association of Local Government Auditors Conference in May. Next slide. So engagement updates in progress during the second quarter is the card expense review, facilities project delivery, and then the Aurora Police body-worn camera compliance. Completed in the second quarter was just our kind of spot check for the narcotics section financial review. Nothing of note there. Our engagement tracking update, so progress against that 2024 plan. We have one engagement rating active. That's the card expense audit, which should be wrapping up here in the next 2 months. For the 2025, we have 2 engagements currently active. No changes to our engagement tracking updates as far as percentage of accepted recommendations. We did not complete any audits this quarter. Overall engagement tracking updates. So this is the department's progress. So those that started the year with audit recommendations, blue indicates recommendations closed, green indicates in progress. Of note for police, they did actually close out a couple. It was just at the end of the month. So this slide doesn't reflect that. You'll see those numbers in our third quarter update. Next, as requested, a more detailed update for the court administration cash handling updates. So far implemented and closed. For this one is the recommendations around access. So access to the cash area has been updated and is being regularly reviewed. For change funds were consolidated, and then they did perform an assessment for the structure of those change funds, which will be assigned to each cash area. For vending proceeds, because they are not receiving vending proceeds, this one's really not as applicable because they don't need to comply with city policies because they no longer have that cash on hand. And then for detention, they are using a triplicate hard copy receipt book now to receipt all funds, and they are using a drop safe to secure those funds. Next slide, please. Still outstanding is system reports per the update from court administration. They're waiting on the city to implement the new financial system to determine what system reports they're going to create for that internally developed system they're currently using. And then for system controls per the update, discussions are being planned, reviewing that, and they believe cost is a factor. For the vending machine vendor management, there is currently no written agreement. I did receive a letter from the vendor this week from court administration, but that's not an agreement. So we'll need a written agreement for that, outlining responsibility as parties, and that applies to commissions as well. We need that written agreement. Additionally, for cashing checks, card tempering, overall policies and procedures, they have drafted the policies and procedures. They include those elements. So once the policies are finalized, we can review that final copy that will address those, and then the training can be completed on those. And that's the end of the presentation. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I have a couple. So on the change funds, can you explain what that, like, I guess I don't really understand what the solution was. It sounds like they're still using cash, but maybe we've changed policies a little bit, or can you explain that a little bit more?
Yep. So change funds are typically like the change drawer, right? And so different departments handle those differently. So some just have, per drawer. So you maybe have 5 drawers, maybe at 1 backup change fund. So you have 6. What they have chosen to do is to have it per each cashier, which means that per each person handling cash, they're assigned their own change fund. Pros and cons to both methods. As far as accountability, I do believe they probably have a higher number of change funds than change drawers going that method. They are securely stored in a safe. On that one, we really just wanted them to really think about what the best way was for them to go forward on that, with the pros and cons for each. So they did make the decision to go per cashier.
So are the change bags being audited?
I believe so. And I think Candace and Trina are on there, but I do believe they're counting those end of shift.
Yeah, those are counted every day. Okay.
And then, so I guess maybe a larger question as it pertains to, like it's mentioned on the detention receipts, for example, it seems like we are still using outdated, unreliable technology. I mean, using a triplicate receipt book, we're the 49th largest city in the country. I don't really think that seems to be a good method for tracking receipts. Book can get lost. there's a million things that can happen with it, right? And so I guess I'm curious where we're at in the process of software. I know that the software exists. We've had these conversations for years. You all made the decision to not use a third-party software, even though council gave that direction 2 different times. And so I guess I'm just curious why we're still using outdated methods like a triplicate receipt book.
Well, these funds are not funds that belong to the court. This is actually police department funds. So they're from the sexual offenders, and we are trying to work with the police department, but we actually give them the money, they do the receipt and send it back. So they're not our funds. So that's where we kind of run into a little bit of problem with this one. So we're trying to work with the police department to figure out how to best resolve this, because we do it as a courtesy. And it's kind of a layover from when the police department used to run the detention center. And Michelle, maybe you must have more to add to that too.
Yeah, so a lot of this is cash bonds, not as much as the sex offender registrations. This is the cash bonds that previously were not receipted at all, that are now at least being recorded in a hard copy receipt book. So there is some sort of record. Agree, electronic system is best of case. However, the current electronic system, I don't have enough. The other recommendations need to be implemented before I believe they could implement that with the system.
Yeah,
controls.
and I think once we get over, because we're transferring to not Clover, somebody probably needs to help me, but we're transferring over. And once they do that, then we can implement a receipting system for the bonds. So we're waiting for that so that we can do it through Clover. And so that's something that we're looking at, and that's part of the transition into the new financial system that we're going to.
Okay, so what is the timeline for that? Because this is listed as implemented, and while yes, I guess it's implemented in that we were not using receipts at all before, and now we're at least using a receipt book. It sounds like the final solution isn't here. So what is the timeline for that?
And Candace, just to be clear, my understanding is you're not implementing a new financial system, that you guys are sticking with your internally developed receipt system. You're just going to be using the reports out of that. So if that's not accurate, if someone can speak to that, but that was the update that I had, was that you're not actually switching the receipting system, that you're going to be using the reports and stuff and building similar into your internally developed system that Kyle created for you guys.
But along with all the changes that the city's going through now, we'll be able to use Clover a little bit more easily to receipt in. But I would say, I mean, it's not that, because when we do bonds, they do get the paperwork that said they posted a bond. So it's not like they walk away, or they did walk away previously without verification that they did post a bond. But we are working through that, and it's part of the changes that the city is going through that will help us implement a receipting system in detention a little bit easier than we do now. So it will be electronic and not hard copy. And it's my understanding that we are like, just a month or 2 away from being able to do that.
Okay. So then my next question is on system controls, and there's a note in here, and I don't know where this came from, but it says cost is a factor. So I'm curious about that, because council previously gave one-time money of $500,000 and $200,000 ongoing money for this project. And so the decision was made to not use an off-the-shelf system, despite the fact that an off-the-shelf system was developed. And that kind of led to a lot of different issues. So I'm curious why now cost is an issue when that money was previously given, and I don't believe it was used for this.
Yeah, it's no longer in our budget. I don't have it sitting in my budget. It didn't carry over.
Well, correct, because the decision was made not to use it for what it was budgeted for. So, okay, so then I guess my question still remains, why is cost a factor? What is the issue? What do we need to do to get the system controls in place? Because I don't feel like there's a recognition that the findings for the court IT audit or for the court audit were significant and serious. And the answers that I'm being given I don't consider them thorough answers, and they're not satisfying me to the level that I feel like they're going to be taken care of in a manner that's going to get us where we need to be. There's a note on here that says cost is a factor. So I'm asking who put that note on there and what does that mean? Because money was previously budgeted, not used for this project. And so what now?
Well, I don't have money in my budget currently, and we are exploring. I don't even know how much it would cost to have a third party come in, but because we're switching our financials and going with a different provider, we think that there may be more reports that will meet some of the recommendations. And so we're working through that. But we are also looking at how much it would cost to have a third party come in and do an audit. I just don't even know how much that would be. It seems like, every time we do a consultant, there's a large amount there. And so we're a little bit concerned about what that would be, but we're still exploring it and seeing if that's something that we can fit in. We're just not there yet because we're making this other transition and moving our financials into Workday. So there is a lot of programming going on that's going to make changes to the process. So if we brought somebody in now, we'd have to redo it again. So we want to make sure we make it through this process and that we don't have to do it twice. And we do take this seriously. I mean, I took this whole thing seriously. That's why I asked, for an audit, because we do take it seriously.
Well, and I appreciate that it's expensive. I get it's expensive, but we wouldn't have to spend that money had these issues not existed in the first place. We wouldn't have to spend that money had we used an off-the-shelf case, go through all of these things. And those decisions led us to where we are today, where we didn't have good cash handling policies. We didn't have adequate internal controls. We had one employee as the only person with access. Go through the list of things. And there was a reason we got to there, because decisions were made to not use money that council allocated in the budget. And that led us to now. I get that it's expensive, but that could have all been avoided, I believe, had those things been done. So, I mean, it's kind of like you spend the money then or you spend it now. Now we're probably going to have to spend money on a third-party audit plus doing all those things that we previously budgeted. So, yeah, neither here nor there, I guess. Councilmember Bergan?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Gardner. I have pretty much the same questions that you just posed. I'm really concerned about the fact that there was money allocated and it wasn't used for that intended purpose. I thought you said correct me if I'm wrong, Candace, I thought you just said we were switching systems, but we're not switching systems, correct?
Well, we're switching in our financials. So we're going from one solution to Workday. And there is another third party in there that's new to us that has a little bit more reports and stuff that we believe will be a bit available to us. But when and I don't know if Scott Newman's on here, but we've talked about this a couple times at council meetings, and maybe it just didn't register.
Yeah.
But as we move forward, looking at switching to an out-of-the-box system, we found that there was a bunch of integration into the city attorney's office, into the police department, into records that would be broken. And we would have to, really spend more money, not just in my department, but in these other departments to get these, the way that the integration is working back up. So we would not, the 500,000 wouldn't even have been enough. We're talking millions.
Right.
And so I worked with, Scott Newman in IT, and we worked together with Kyle. And the decision was made that, at this point, that it was better to stay where we were at than to try to go to an off the shelf and ask for more money and to break, the prosecutor system and all of that. Because once we got into it, there was a little bit more integration that we were unaware of.
Okay, but you said the one solution is going to go to Workday, but I thought it didn't integrate with Workday.
It doesn't, but there's a third party that, and I'm probably not explaining it very well.
Well,
There's a third
yeah.
party that passes the information around, and there it's a little bit more robust than we had before, which is what is going to give us Clover and a little bit more reports. And I think Trina Sparks is on too. She might remember the other company that we're working with to get reports.
And
are you on, Trina?
Yeah, and I just want to say, I don't know if it's IT or what, but apparently council was not given the right information, or if there was an update that, like, I don't know, maybe I was absent. Councilmember Gardner, do you remember getting an update on the fact that the money that was allocated was no longer going to be the solution, or wasn't enough money to get to where we needed to go? I don't remember any of that.
I don't, and that's I think we were pretty clear for years at M&F, and to me, then the question should have been, okay, what money do we need to get there? I'm not aware of other court systems having an internally developed program that one person can access, and when that person's not available, reports can't be produced. Like that's absurd from an internal control perspective. And so then the question should not have been, well, we're not going to do this. Sorry. The question should have been, this is what we need to get there, because the solution wasn't good enough. It led to poor internal controls.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from that only one person can run reports. So I don't know where that came from. But that's not the case as far as I know.
Councilmember Coombs.
Oh, just real. I'm sorry. Real quick. Just on the police part of it that is not completed. I mean, that bar looked like a big, huge bar. So
it is. So they had several that were due end of June, and so about the last week or so they were going in and implementing and closing, but due to timing of getting this presentation ready, so theirs isn't fully reflected. But I would say they closed out at least 5 of the recommendations, and I anticipate several more being closed out from their calls for service audit and the firearms audit. So they're actively working and progressing in providing updates on that. It was just kind of a timing issue between them and me getting this presentation together.
Okay, and then the last point, maybe the cash bonds should go back to the police department.
I don't believe
no,
the police.
I'm sorry. Cash bonds can't go to the police department. The only thing that can is the sexual offender registration. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember, if I confused you.
Well, I thought you said they were with the police department before.
Yeah, I was talking about the sex offender registration fee, and I got confused, and that's where Michelle had to step in. She said we were talking more about the bonds.
Okay.
But we are exploring moving the bonds to the courthouse for during court hours until we get the receipting system. But of course, that wouldn't take care of weekends and evenings, but the majority of our bonds currently are posted online and not cash. So there will be some that we will need to continue to explore getting the receipting in detention center.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, so I'm just confused about
it. Real quick.
Michelle,
sure. I saw Michelle come off mute. Did you want to address anything in there, Michelle, before Councilmember Coombs goes? Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. Just on the hard copy receipt books, one of the reasons why we allowed that to be implemented is because we still have the recommendations for the internally developed receipt system and controls. Ideally, that's what detention will go to, but rather than holding it open when there was already another recommendation, that's why that was implemented. So I just want to clarify that. And I believe Scott might have more information on as far as the Workday transition, because I think it's 2 different things. One's a financial system of financial reporting, and the other one's the actual receipt system. If you need him to provide more detail on that.
Councilmember Coombs, are you okay if Scott jumps in?
Yeah, why don't we have Scott detail that, and then maybe he can also help illuminate some of the other items that I have questions about related to the technology.
Well, thanks, council members. Scott Newman, CIO, and then definitely would want to see if there's anything Terry would like to add too, but we are on the verge of going live with Workday. Workday Financials goes live on Wednesday of next week. And as part of that system, we are implementing it cashiering system called Teller. It's from a company called Can-Am. And the finance team, and specifically through the cashier's office, has been working specifically on trying to centralize some of the different functions that we use. And so Terry and I, when this first came up, we had discussed that it's possible that Teller may be able to serve the needs of the receipting system, not just for courts, but for anybody who has that kind of need. But we have not specifically explored that yet because we are still in the middle of the implementation. And to the best of my knowledge, there are no other known integrations from any other system that are coming into either Teller or to Workday at this point in time. There was nothing in the roadmap for our go live next Wednesday. So I'm not sure if I answered your questions or if I opened up others, but I wanted to provide that info.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, so sorry, just to clarify on that last point, Scott, you're saying that there is not another integration for the receipting that's going live with the
only
system change.
Correct. And I would need to have Terry double check confirm, but I believe our plan via the Teller system is Teller will be the receipting system for transactions where we're cash handling specifically via, and then that system in turn hands that over to Workday. And thank you, Terry just chimed in and said that's correct. So there's nothing currently in the scope for Teller for any of the courts functions that I'm aware of currently.
Yeah, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
I was under the impression from my IT people that Teller had more reports, and we thought that it would possibly satisfy some of the requirements for the reports. So if I confused everybody, I'm sorry.
And I do think, to Candace's point, that is definitely a value of Teller, and I think that that is a definite advantage of why we're pursuing that system for other city functions as well. It's just right now, it's not currently on the roadmap for implementation at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So my questions maybe are a little bit easier for Scott to answer, or maybe not. They're related to the technology integrations question. So my understanding was that the off-the-shelf solutions, there's a couple different ones that are available, but that would be able to integrate with Axon, which is our body cam vendor system, that they would be able to integrate with evidence.com. So can you help me understand what the integrations are that either would be broken or not possible by utilizing off the shelf solutions?
I don't know if I would say there's any that are not possible. Courts IT has done a lot of work specifically around Axon, and so they have built some integrations with Axon to consume some of that data from that system specifically already. And that does feed some information from the police record system into the overall court system so that they can interact and manage it. I mean, every vendor is a little bit different. It is our standard process that when we are looking and selecting a vendor, that we make sure that they have open APIs, is what they're called, open APIs that allow for those integrations. That's our standard procedure. So it's certainly possible there's a vendor out there that wouldn't be able to integrate, but they also would be a vendor that we wouldn't select based on that criteria as well. Does that answer the question, Councilmember? I'm sorry, Councilmember, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
No
I
problem.
guess I'm then just confused, and Candace, maybe this is a question then back to you. What are the integrations that would have been broken by using an off-the-shelf vendor?
Well, currently we have warrants that automatically go into CBI, and they also go to records. So it's a live system, and that would not work. We also have a police schedule that goes in to our system, and everything could be integrated. But we're talking millions of dollars. Every module you purchase or integration, it's not. You have your off your shelf and then you have your add-ons, right? And then we also have a subpoena system that is automated and that works with our system and also with the prosecutors. And I probably am not the best person to explain it, but somehow the reports and everything flows through integration that our IT has developed, and then it goes in and makes sure that it's in prosecution, and that if there's any updates, then it automatically sends it. And I might be missing a few other ones, but it's there's just a lot of things that were built in that, like I said, they've been running and there's been no issues. And if we went with an off the shelf, then we would have to, work with records to finish or fix some things, the police department, as far as, the officer's schedule, and also Julie Heckman's service system would have to be updated as well.
Okay, so that sounds to me like a system that's set up to fail, that has integrations that are created that are kind of workarounds instead of the like more fluid, like well-designed integrations that are part of these different systems in their off-the-shelf capacities. So my question is why, if it was just a matter of cost at that time, why it wasn't brought back to council to say, hey, what you asked us to do is possible, but it's going to cost us more money right now. Because it does sound to me like in the long term, it would have saved us money, even though in the short term, it was going to cost more. So why wasn't there a conversation saying, hey, can we, and I believe there was a conversation in which we were asked to spend additional money above what we originally allocated. But so I don't understand why the conversation wasn't, hey, in order to do what you want us to do, we need more money.
Well, and I think maybe some of those conversations happened before I came on board. It was my idea to explore this. I don't remember it being asked of me. I mean, it was something that I wanted to do. I mean, maybe Scott could answer more, but some of these systems that are working, we haven't had to do anything to them. So it's not something that's likely to fail. And all of the platforms that we are going to are web-based platforms and are pretty much what we would get if we got off the shelf, and they can be maintained easily by any IT person. But I'll let Scott kind of talk about this, because this is a conversation that we had together before we came to a decision.
So I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question, council member? Restate the question, please.
So I guess my concern is that it sounds like the decision to not go with the off the shelf solution that council requested was based on cost at the time. And so my question is, why wasn't it, let's go back to council and explain that cost issue and request additional funds if needed, or at least talk about the pros and cons of spending more money to address the potential additional needs or keep the in-house systems?
Yeah, so the only conversation I had specific to that was with Kyle Peterson, and it wasn't even around the cost factor, wasn't our discussion point. It was around the risk factor that at the time the state had recently passed a new legislation, and that Judge Day himself had also imposed some new requirements. And the concern was whether or not a third-party system could adjust their system to accommodate those new requirements in the time frame that the courts required. But I have not been involved in any financial conversations regarding any of the court's technology. Aside from time to time, we partner on providing some of the backbone infrastructure like network equipment, network capacity, things like that. But I've not been involved in any of the conversations specific to the financial implications or analysis on whether or not to maintain their existing system or to switch over to a new system.
Well, thank you for the clarification on the timing and policy related issues. That is actually pretty helpful. And then my only final question, and I'm sorry that this has been taken a while to kind of suss out, but is what were the funds spent on that were not spent, and this is a Candace question, on the system that council had, like the process and systems that council had directed court administration to use?
They were carried over and put into our capital project bucket. So that is part of the funds that are being used for the renovation currently scheduled for our jury assembly room to make the 2 ADA restrooms in our jury assembly area. So they were moved to the capital project fund.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Councilmember Bergan.
Yeah, just final note. Honestly, I know, Scott, you said you weren't involved and you know, a lot of this was before your time and everything. I don't understand a city of our size. IT should totally be involved in recommendations to departments. I mean, departments are not experts on technology, as far as I know. So, I mean, I hope going forward that our technology department is making recommendations. And if you can't make the recommendations, then let's get a third party consultant in that can look at this. I can't believe that, like, it seems to me like we're double paying right now. Is that incorrect?
Again, I don't understand and have no purview into the insight of the financials specific to the court's IT operation. But I will say, Councilmember Bergan, that this has been a topic that has been discussed going back since Councilmember Gruber was here, and it is long before my tenure with the city. It has always been the position that courts IT should have its own separate IT department, and city IT has not been involved in 90% of their operations. And when Jim Twombly was still here, we did have a meeting. We specifically made recommendations that we should have a third party do a process analysis so that we could understand the data flow from the police record system to the Axon system to judicial to the courts administration of prosecution, defense attorneys, then on to the detention staff. And that was completely shut down. Jim and I were told, no, it was outside of our purview and that was not our area of responsibility. And we were shut out and said that we should have no involvement in it. And that is where that has been left with since.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you.
Well, and Scott, could you elaborate on that? Because, I mean, it wasn't me who shut you down, right?
Actually, yes, Candace, it was a meeting that I had with you. Jim and I were in a meeting with you, Judge Day, Julie Heckman.
Conversation. I remember a conversation about moving core IT under big IT, but I don't recall that conversation, but I could totally be wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was a meeting that Jim Twombly and I had with yourself, Judge Day, Julie Heckman, and Doug Wilson at the time, and as well as Kyle was also at the meeting. And Kyle, for his part, agreed. He thought a process review would be very helpful, but we were told very emphatically across the board that no, that should not be the case, and that things should be left to the purview of each of those respective divisions to determine what was the most appropriate function for their needs.
All right. Thank you all. So I guess to wrap up, well, maybe I should ask, are there any other questions from Councilmember Bergan or Councilmember Coombs?
No,
Okay.
just can we get an update?
Well, that was going to be what I was going to ask is, so, I mean, what would be a next reasonable cadence for an update? And I guess maybe that's a Michelle and a Candace question. I don't know.
So we're typically giving quarterly updates. So this typically would flow into our next quarterly update, which would be October. So if there's a need for an update between that, we can definitely do that and coordinate with that. But our next scheduled update would be that October for presenting the third quarter update.
Okay, so I guess I'll ask the rest of the committee thoughts on October. My only concern with that is if there are going to be budget implications, we need to know about that sooner, but I don't know. I'll kind of defer to Councilmember Coombs and Bergan.
Yeah, I would say if we could get an update before the budget workshop.
Honestly, in my view, given the seriousness of all this, I would prefer to have updates at each meeting. until we get this resolved.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. And frankly, we only have, I believe, 2 meetings until our budget workshop anyways. So, I mean, yeah, I think we should get an update, even if it's a small one in August and then another one in September. And then that way we can go into the budget workshop, kind of having some ideas of if there's going to be any budget implications for whatever. So let's plan with that. And so, Terry, can you make sure that we have that on this on the agenda the next 2 months?
We'll do that.
Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for the conversation on that one. Let's see. That was our last meeting, or our last item, I should say. So our next meeting is scheduled for August 7th. Are there any concerns from Councilmember Bergan or Coombs on the 7th of August?
Nope.
All right.
That works
Thanks.
for me.
Oh, great. Thanks. Appreciate everybody's time and have a happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th.
All right, have
Bye.
a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.